The emergency beacon cut through the darkness of space like a scream. Its red warning light pulsed in the communication chamber of the Galactic Council station, casting eerie shadows on the polished walls. Ambassador Veltar's six-fingered hands shook as he reached for the forbidden transmitter that hadn't been touched in 50 years. Around him, the greatest minds of the galaxy watched in horror. The Altarians with their golden skin and proud bearing stood frozen. The logical Centaurians, masters of mathematics and reason, calculated impossible odds. The noble vegan Confederates, peacekeepers for 1,000 years, knew their time was over. "This is Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic." His voice cracked as he spoke into the ancient device. "We are broadcasting on the emergency frequency. This is a Class 9 extinction event. The Void Swarm has returned after 3,000 years of sleep. Our outer colonies are falling. Billions are already dead." He paused, his throat tight with fear and shame. The words he was about to speak went against everything the Galactic Council believed in. For 50 years, they had kept the Sol system locked away behind energy barriers and warning beacons. The creatures that lived there were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. They called them Deathworlders because they came from a planet that should have killed them, but instead made them into something terrifying. We invoke the Deathworld Protocol," Veltar whispered. "We ask the humans for help." The chamber fell dead silent. Even the air recycler seemed to stop humming. Council member Zarin of Altair Prime stepped forward, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. "You cannot be serious," he said. "Humans are barely civilized. They fight each other constantly. They turn their own planet's resources into weapons. They are chaos incarnate." "Chaos that might save us," Veltar replied, his voice growing. "Stronger. Our fleets are gone, Zarin. The Void Swarm tore through our best ships like they were made of paper. We have nothing left." 3 star systems away, on the rim world of Zephyr Prime, the nightmare was already unfolding. The sky had turned black with mechanical ships, each one the size of a mountain. They moved with perfect coordination like a swarm of metal insects. Guided by a single hungry mind, 10-year-old Kira pressed her face against the shelter window, watching the destruction unfold. The beautiful crystal cities of her people were being torn apart piece by piece. The Void Swarm ships descended like vultures, their mechanical arms reaching down to grab chunks of buildings, vehicles, even people. Everything they touched was pulled up into their holes and processed into raw materials. "Mama, where are the fleet ships?" Kira asked, tears streaming down her blue-tinted cheeks. "Why aren't they protecting us?" Her mother Lyra pulled her daughter close. She couldn't. Tell her the truth. The Galactic Defense Fleet, the pride of 1,000 worlds, had lasted exactly 17 minutes against the Void Swarm. The aliens had watched in horror. As their most advanced battleships were simply absorbed into the swarm, their crews and technology becoming part of the growing mechanical plague. Above them, the swarm ships continued their harvest. They had been sleeping in the dark spaces between galaxies for 3 millennia, waiting for some unknown signal to wake them. Now they were hungry, and hunger was all they understood. Planets, stars, entire solar systems would be consumed too. Feed their endless need to grow and spread. Back on the council station, the debate raged on. Council member Thex of Centauri bent over his datapad, running calculations at superhuman speed. "The probability of human assistance being effective is only 12.7%, he announced. "They lack our advanced technology. Their ships are crude, by our standards. Their weapons are primitive fusion devices and chemical explosives. But they fight differently," interrupted Council member Vera of the Vegan Confederacy. Her silver hair gleamed under the emergency lights. "Our reports from the quarantine zone show they treat war as an art form. They study it, practice it, perfect it in ways we find disturbing." The truth was, the Galactic Council had been watching humanity for decades through long-range sensors and spy probes. What they saw terrified them. Humans didn't just fight wars. They celebrated them in their entertainment. They studied ancient battles like other species studied poetry. They had turned violence into science, and science into an obsession. The Void Swarm was different from any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bargained with, couldn't be frightened or convinced to stop. They were machines with one purpose: consume everything and grow stronger. Ambassador Veltar looked at the beacon, still pulsing its desperate message into the void. Somewhere out there, in the quarantined Sol system, the humans were receiving their plea for help. Would they answer? They care about aliens who had kept them locked away like dangerous animals? On Zephyr Prime, another city fell to the mechanical harvest. The screams of his people echoed across the communication channels, and Veltar knew they had only hours left before the swarm moved on to the next world. The beacon was their last hope, their final desperate gamble. The Deathworlders were their only chance at survival. Admiral Kong Daeho was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The bridge of the Baekdu hummed with its usual quiet efficiency, Earth's blue marble spinning slowly outside the viewport. It was supposed to be a routine patrol day along the quarantine barrier that had kept humanity locked in their own solar system for 50 years. Then the emergency klaxon started screaming. Admiral, to the bridge. Priority Alpha message, incoming. The voice crackled through the ship's intercom system. Kong, wait. Daeho set down his coffee mug and walked calmly to his command chair. At 45, he was the youngest admiral in human history, promoted after leading the successful defense of Mars colony against asteroid pirates. His crew respected him because he never panicked, never rushed, and never left anyone behind. What do we have, Lieutenant Park? He asked as he settled into his chair. Lieutenant Park Min-soo, barely 25 and fresh from the academy, looked up from his communications console with wide eyes. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from outside the quarantine zone. It's from the Galactic Council. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Galactic Council. They were the alien alliance that had discovered humanity 50 years ago and immediately decided Earth was too dangerous to join galactic civilization. They'd built energy barriers around the entire solar system and posted warning beacons telling everyone to stay away from the violent Deathworlders. Put it through, Kong Daeho ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a blue-skinned alien with 6 arms and eyes like liquid mercury. The creature looked terrified, its voice shaking as it spoke. This is Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic. We are under attack by an ancient enemy known as the Void Swarm. Our fleets have been destroyed. Billions are dead. We are offering full galactic citizenship, unlimited trade rights, and technological exchange in return for immediate military assistance. But the transmission cut to tactical data that made everyone on the bridge suck in their breath. Entire solar systems were being consumed by mechanical ships the size of moons. The alien fleets, with their beautiful energy weapons and graceful designs, were being torn apart like paper. Sir, whispered Lieutenant Park, they're really asking us for help. After keeping us locked up for 50 years, they want us to save them. Kong Daeho studied the data streams showing the Void Swarm's advance. These weren't just enemy ships. They were a plague, a mechanical virus that consumed everything in its path and grew stronger with each victory. The aliens had fought them with honor and precision. Following rules of war that had worked for thousands of years, it hadn't been enough. Get me Captain Lim Dae-young on the Taebaek, he ordered. The screen split to show a tough-looking woman. In her 30s, her ship's bridge scarred from a dozen battles. I saw the transmission, Admiral, Captain Lim said before he could speak. When do we leave? And Captain Yoon Ha-jin on the Jiri Kong Daeho continued. The screen split again to show a younger captain, barely 30, but with the cold eyes of someone who'd seen too much combat. My crew's already suiting up, Captain Yoon reported. Can be ready in 2 hours. Good. Signal all ships in the Sol system. I want everything that can fly and fight. Military vessels, merchant ships, mining barges, colony transports. If it has engines and can mount weapons, I want it. Sir, Lieutenant Park interrupted. The Galactic Council is expecting us to refuse. Their projections show we'll stay behind the quarantine barrier where it's safe. Kong Daeho smiled grimly. Then they don't know humans very well. Within an hour, Earth's orbital shipyards were buzzing with activity. The merchant vessel Sol Express was being fitted with nuclear mining charges. The luxury liner Busan Dream was loading Marine battalions in her passenger compartments. Even the tiny racing yacht Jeju Wind was getting missile pods welded to her hull. Captain Seo Jimin of the mining ship Chungjiang was working alongside his crew to mount industrial lasers on his vessel's hull. "These aliens kept us locked up for 50 years, he muttered as he tightened the mounting bolts. "Now they want our help?" "Doesn't matter," replied his chief engineer, Kim Hae-suk. "People are dying. It's all that matters." The human fleet that assembled was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek military vessels flew alongside converted freighters. Massive colony ships carried entire armies. Mining vessels bristled with improvised weapons. Even research. Ships had been armed with experimental weapons their scientists had been secretly developing. 327 ships in total, carrying over 500,000 humans into the unknown. It's not because they expected gratitude, not because they wanted glory, but because when someone asked for help, humans answered. Admiral Kang Dae-ho stood on his bridge as the fleet formed up. Earth hung in the distance, small and blue and precious. Many of these ships wouldn't come back. Many of these brave souls would never see home again. "All ships. This is Admiral Kang," he broadcast on the fleet frequency. "We're about to cross the quarantine barrier for the first time in 50 years. We're going to face an enemy that destroyed fleets far more advanced than ours. We're probably going to die." He paused, looking at his crew. Lieutenant Park sat straighter at his station. The weapons officer, Sergeant Lee Young-ho, checked his systems one more time. Everyone was ready. "But here's what the aliens don't understand about humans," Kang Dae-ho continued. "We don't fight to win. We fight because it's the right thing to do. We fight because someone has to. And we fight because no one else will." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth behind. The Deathworlders were coming to save the galaxy. The human fleet tore through hyperspace and emerged into a nightmare. The Zephyrian system was dying before their eyes. What had once been a peaceful collection of mining worlds and research stations was now a graveyard of twisted metal and burning atmosphere. Admiral Kang Dae-ho gripped his command chair as the Baekdu shuddered from the gravitational distortions. "Status report. 12 Void Swarm motherships in the system," reported Lieutenant Park Min-soo, his voice tight with shock. "Each one is over 10 kilometers long. They're eating the planet, sir." Through the main viewport, Kang Dae-ho watched in horror. As massive mechanical arms reached down from the swarm ships, tearing chunks of rock and metal from a mining world's surface, the stolen matter was pulled up into the ship's bellies, where it was processed and converted into more swarm vessels. It was like watching cancer grow in real time. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Defense Fleet," Lieutenant Park announced. "What's left of it?" The screen flickered to show Admiral Zexstar of the Altarian Navy, his golden skin pale with exhaustion. Behind him, his bridge, sparked with damaged systems. "Human vessel. This is Admiral Zexstar. You must retreat immediately. The Void Swarm cannot be defeated through conventional tactics. We've lost 80% of our fleet in the past 6 hours." Kang Dae-ho studied the tactical display. The alien ships were keeping their distance, firing long-range energy beams at the swarm vessels. It was textbook galactic warfare, elegant and precise. It was also completely useless. The Void Swarm ships simply absorbed the energy and grew stronger. "Admiral Zexstar, this is Admiral Kang of the human fleet. With respect, your tactics aren't working then. What do you propose?" the alien admiral asked desperately. Kang Dae-ho smiled grimly. "We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to cheat all ships. This is Admiral Kang." His voice boomed across the fleet frequency. "Forget everything you learned about civilized warfare. These things don't surrender. They don't retreat, and they don't negotiate. They're machines with one program: consume everything. So we're going to break them." Captain Lim Da-young on the Taebaek was already moving before the admiral finished speaking. Her cruiser accelerated straight toward the nearest swarm mothership, engines at full burn. "Captain, what are you doing?" her tactical officer shouted. "That's suicide." "No," Captain Lim replied calmly. "That's tactics."
Ow.
The Void Swarm ship responded. Exactly as predicted, its defensive systems locked onto the approaching human vessel. calculating intercept vectors and optimal firing solutions. The mechanical intelligence that controlled it had fought thousands of battles against logical opponents who followed predictable patterns. Humans weren't logical at the last possible second. Captain Lim triggered her ship's experimental cloaking device, a piece of technology the aliens didn't even know existed. The Tabek vanished from sensors just as the swarm ship fired its massive energy cannon at empty space. Now, Captain Lim shouted, the Tabek materialized directly under the swarm ship's hull and released its entire payload of nuclear mining charges. The explosions tore through the alien vessel's belly, venting atmosphere and mechanical parts into space. 3 secondary explosions followed as the swarm ship's power systems overloaded. The alien fleet, watching from a safe distance, fell silent in shock. In 30 seconds, a single human ship had accomplished what their entire armada couldn't do in hours. Mining ship Chungjung, this is the Admiral. Kong Daeho's voice cut through the celebration. You're closest to that research station. Can you extract the survivors? Captain Seo Jamin of the converted ore hauler was already changing course. Copy that, Admiral. We're going in. The ship wasn't built for combat. Chungjung was a 40-year-old mining vessel with industrial lasers and cargo holds designed for hauling asteroids. But Captain Seo had spent the journey from Earth, making modifications that would have horrified any safety inspector. Engineering, give me everything the reactor's got. He ordered a swarm fighter craft swarm toward the fleeing alien refugees. Sir, if we push the reactor past the red line, we could explode, warned his chief engineer Kim Hae-suk. Better to die trying than live knowing we didn't, Captain Seo replied. The mining lasers that had once carved through solid rock now focused their industrial strength beams on the incoming swarm fighters. Each blast could melt through a meter of steel, and the swarm ship's lightweight construction offered little protection. Fighter after fighter disintegrated under the precisely aimed cutting beams. Meanwhile, in the cargo holds, Sergeant Major Oh Jin Hao was organizing the rescue of alien survivors. The Zephyrians were tall, blue-skinned humanoids with 6 arms, and they stared at their human rescuers with a mixture of terror and amazement. It's okay, Sergeant Major, Oh said gently to a group of alien children, his translator device converting. His words, "We're here to help." A young Zephyrian girl with silver hair looked up at him with large, liquid eyes. Are you really the Deathworlders? Shh, she whispered. Oh smiled and knelt down to her level. We're humans, and we don't leave people. Behind, above them, the battle raged on. Captain Yoon, Hajin on the Jiri, is leading a squadron of converted merchant ships in a complex dance around a swarm mothership, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the massive vessel's weapons while dropping improvised bombs into its weapon ports. The luxury liner Busan Dream had become a mobile fortress, its passenger decks now filled with Marine battalions who were using the ship's observation lounges as sniper nests. Every window was a firing position, every deck a potential battlefield. Even the tiny racing yacht, Jeju Wind, was making a difference, its pilot using the ship's incredible speed to deliver precision strikes against swarm communication nodes. Admiral Zexstar watched the human fleet in stunned amazement. How are they doing this? He asked his tactical officer. They're not following any known combat doctrine, the officer replied, his voice filled with awe. They're improvising, adapting, using their ships in ways they were never designed for. It's beautiful chaos. As another swarm mothership exploded under concentrated human fire, Admiral Kong Dae-ho allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had expected humanity to fight like civilized species, with honor and precision and predictable tactics. Instead, humans fought like humans, creative, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless when protecting the innocent. The tide of battle was beginning to turn. The battle had been raging for 18 hours when the impossible started happening. The Void Swarm, which had never retreated in 3,000 years of recorded history, began pulling back from the inner planets of the Zephyrian system. Admiral Kang Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Baekdu, his uniform torn and bloodied from when a console had exploded during the last swarm attack. Around him, His crew worked with grim determination, their faces illuminated by the red glow of emergency lighting. "Damage report," he called out. "Port engines are offline, sir," reported Chief Engineer Park Soo-min. "We've got hull breaches on decks 7 through 12, and the main reactor is running at 60% efficiency. But we're still in the fight." Through the main viewport, Kang Dae-ho could see the remnants of his fleet. Of the 327 ships that had left Earth, only 143 were still capable of combat. The space around them was filled with debris from both human and swarm vessels, creating a deadly obstacle course of twisted metal and leaking plasma. But they were winning. Captain Yoon. Hyjin's voice crackled over the communications system from the Jiri Admiral. "I've got a problem. There's a swarm mothership moving toward the refugee convoy, and it's too big for conventional weapons. My missiles are just bouncing off its hull." Kang Dae-ho studied the tactical display. The swarm mothership was massive, easily 15 kilometers long and bristling with weapons. It was heading straight for a group of Zephorian civilian ships that were trying to escape the system. "Captain Yoon, pull back and wait for support," he ordered. "Negative, sir. Those refugees won't make it. I'm going in." Before Kang Dae-ho could respond, he watched in horror as the Jiri accelerated directly toward the mothership. But instead of firing weapons, Captain Yoon was doing something that made his blood run cold. "All crew, this is the captain." Her voice echoed across the fleet frequency. "Abandon ship immediately. Repeat, abandon ship. It's been an honor serving with you." The Jiri's crew pods ejected in a shower of sparks, each one carrying precious human lives to safety. Meanwhile, Captain Yoon remained on the bridge, guiding her ship on a suicide run toward the swarm vessel. "Captain, what are you doing?" Kang Dae-ho shouted into his communicator. "What needs to be done, sir?" came her calm reply. "Tell my family I love them." The Jiri struck the swarm mothership at nearly the speed of light. The impact created a fusion explosion that briefly outshone the system's star, vaporizing both vessels in a ball of nuclear fire. The shockwave sent smaller swarm ships tumbling through space like leaves in a storm. In the silence that followed, Lieutenant Park Min-soo wiped tears from his eyes as he reported, "Mothership destroyed, sir. The refugee convoy is safe." But there was no time to mourn. The battle continued across the system as human ingenuity faced off against mechanical perfection. On the far side of the battlefield, Marine Colonel Han Seung-woo was leading his troops in an assault that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. "Okay, Marines, listen up." Colonel Han spoke into his helmet communicator as his boarding pod approached a damaged swarm vessel. "We're going to fight inside that thing in hard vacuum. No atmosphere, no gravity, no backup. Just us, our suits, and our weapons." The boarding pod punched through the swarm ship's hull with a shower of sparks. Colonel Han was the first one through the breach, his powered armor systems automatically adjusting to the hostile environment. Behind him, 50 of humanity's finest warriors followed, their weapons ready. The interior of the swarm ship was a nightmare of mechanical corridors and moving parts. Paired drones the size of cars skittered through the passages, trying to fix the damage the human ships had inflicted. But they weren't designed for combat, and the Marines tore through them with ruthless efficiency. Sector 7 clear, reported Sergeant Kim Min-young as her squad destroyed another group of repair drones, moving toward the power core. "Copy that, Sergeant. All squads, advance to your objectives. Need to take out this ship's command center before it can coordinate with the rest of the swarm." The Marines moved through the ship like ghosts, their magnetic boots allowing them to walk on walls and ceilings. Where the swarm drones saw impossible fighting conditions, the humans saw just another battlefield. They had trained in the vacuum of space, in the crushing depths of Earth's oceans, in the radioactive wasteland of Mars. This was just another day at the office. Meanwhile, on the Baekdu's bridge, the situation was becoming desperate. Admiral Kang Dae-ho received a transmission from Admiral Zexstar of the remaining Galactic Defense Fleet. "Admiral Kang, this is Admiral Zexstar. My fleet is requesting permission to withdraw. We've taken heavy casualties, and our ships are no longer combat effective." Kang Dae-ho looked at his tactical display. The alien fleet had indeed suffered terrible losses, but they were still in better shape than the human forces. The difference was that the aliens were fighting a war they understood, while humans were fighting a war they were willing to die for. Permission granted, Admiral Zexstar. Get your people to safety. We'll finish this. Admiral, you only have 140 ships left. The swarm still has 6 motherships and countless fighters. This is suicide. Kong Daeho smiled grimly. Admiral, let me tell you something about humans. We've been fighting impossible odds since we first crawled out of caves on our death world. We're not going to stop now. As the alien fleet withdrew, Kong Daeho opened a channel to all remaining human vessels. All ships, this is Admiral Kang. We've come too far to give up now. Swarm is retreating for the first time in galactic history. They're afraid of us, and they should be. He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. They were exhausted, bloodied, but unbroken. These were the sons and daughters of Earth, the children of a world that had tried to kill them every day of their evolution. Final push, people. For Earth, for humanity, and for every innocent life, these machines would devour. All ships form up for a spearhead attack. We're going straight into the heart of the swarm. The remaining human ships formed a tight formation, their battered hulls gleaming in the light of distant explosions. At the tip of the spearhead was the Baekdu, followed by the mining ship Chungjong, the merchant vessel Seoul Express, and dozens of other ships that had never been designed for war, but were fighting anyway. All ships, engage, Kong Daeho ordered. The human fleet accelerated toward the swarm's core formation, their weapons firing in a coordinated barrage that lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. It was madness by any civilized standard. It was also the most beautiful thing the galaxy had ever seen. The Deathworlders were going to save them all. The final Void Swarm mothership hung in space like a wounded giant. Its black hull cracked and bleeding plasma into the void around it. The last few swarm fighters buzzed desperately, their mechanical minds unable to process what was happening. For the first time in 3,000 years, they were losing. Captain Seo Jamin wiped blood from his forehead as he looked at the tactical display on the Chungjung's bridge. His mining ship had taken a beating during the 18-hour battle. But her engines still worked, and her cargo holds were full of rescued Zephyrian civilians. Sir, the mothership is trying to escape, reported his chief engineer Kim Hae-suk. Its jump drive is charging up, Seo. Jamin studied the readings. If that mothership escaped, it would carry the knowledge of human tactics back to the rest of the Void Swarm scattered across the galaxy. Millions more worlds would die before they could mount another defense. How long until it can jump? He asked. 3 minutes, maybe 4. Seo Jamin looked around his bridge. His crew had followed him through hell for the past day, fighting. With nothing but converted mining equipment and pure human stubbornness, they deserved to go home. They deserved to see their families again. But sometimes what you deserved wasn't as important as what needed to be done. All crew, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's intercom. Prepare for emergency evacuation. Get to the escape pods now. Sir, what are you doing? Kim Hae-suk asked, though her expression showed she already knew. Someone has to. Stop that ship, Seo Jamin replied simply. And we're the only ones close enough. His crew began evacuating immediately, no questions asked. That was the thing about humans that the aliens never understood. When the situation was desperate enough, they didn't argue or debate or form committees. They just acted. Admiral Kong Daeho's voice crackled over the communications system. Captain. Seo, what's your status? Admiral, I'm making a final run on the mothership. My crew is evacuating now. There was a pause. Then Kong Daeho's voice came back, heavy with respect and sadness. Understood, Captain. It's been an honor serving with. Seo Jamin waited until the last escape pod had cleared his ship, then pushed the Chungjang's engines to maximum. The old mining vessel accelerated toward the massive swarm ship, her fusion reactor redlining as she built up speed. The defensive systems opened fire, but Seo Jamin had spent 40 years navigating asteroid fields. He rolled and twisted the Chungjung through the incoming fire, with the skill of a master pilot. Closing the distance with each passing second, at the last moment, he activated his ship's mining charges. Hull with the force of a small nuclear weapon, the explosion tearing through both vessels in a flash of brilliant white light. Silence fell across the Zephyrian system. For the first time in over a day, no weapons were firing. No ships were exploding. The last of the Void Swarm was dead. Admiral Kong Daeho stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, looking out at the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields stretched for millions of kilometers, a graveyard of both human and swarm vessels. Of the 327 ships that had left Earth, only 18 were still operational. But they had one. "Sir," Lieutenant Park Min-soo called out, his voice filled with wonder, receiving transmissions from all over the system. Zephyrian survivors are broadcasting thank you messages in dozens of languages. Through the viewport, Kong Daeho could see human rescue ships moving through the debris, pulling alien survivors from damaged vessels and destroyed stations. The same species that had been called savage Deathworlders were now risking their lives to save beings who had once feared them. 3 days later, the emergency session of the Galactic Council was broadcast across known space. Representatives from 1,000 worlds watched as Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic stood before the assembly, his 6 arms trembling with emotion. "My fellow beings," he began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. 3 days ago, we faced extinction. The Void Swarm had returned, and our greatest fleets were destroyed within hours. In our desperation, we did something we had sworn never to do. We asked the humans for help. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The quarantine of the Sol system had been one of the Council's most controversial decisions. Dividing opinion for 50 years, we expected them to refuse, Veltar continued. We expected them to stay safely behind their barriers while the galaxy burned. Instead, they came to our aid without hesitation, asked for nothing in return. We simply came because we needed help. The ambassador activated a holographic display showing the battle statistics. The numbers were staggering. Human losses had been enormous, but they had accomplished something no military force in galactic history had ever achieved. They had defeated the Void Swarm completely. For 50 years, we quarantined the Sol system because we feared what humanity might become, Veltar said, his voice growing stronger. Today, we learned what they already are. They are not the monsters we imagined. They are the galaxy's greatest protectors. Council member Zarin of Altair Prime stood up, his golden skin gleaming under the chamber's lights. The Altarian Confederation votes to lift the quarantine immediately. The Centaurian Union agrees, added another representative. The Vegan Confederacy supports the motion, said a third. One by one, every representative in the chamber stood and voiced their agreement. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in 50 years, humanity was free to join the galactic community. But the Council wanted more than just to lift the quarantine. They wanted human leadership. Admiral Kong Daeho of the Human Fleet, Veltar announced. The Galactic Council formally requests that you accept the position of Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces. The transmission reached the Baekdu as it limped back toward Earth, carrying wounded soldiers and grateful alien refugees. Admiral Kong Daeho looked at the offer on his screen, then at his exhausted crew. "Tell the Council I accept," he said simply.
Ow.
"But with one condition. The next time someone asks for help, we don't debate it, or form committees, or worry about politics. We just go." As the human fleet began its long journey home, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The barriers around Earth came down, replaced by welcome beacons and invitation signals. Human ships appeared at alien ports, carrying not weapons of conquest but tools of trade and friendship. The Zephyrian girl who had asked Sergeant Major O Jinho if he was really a Deathworlder now attended school on New Geneva Colony, learning alongside human children. Her drawings of the battle showed humans not as monsters, but as heroes with kind eyes and gentle hands. Throughout the galaxy, the story spread. The Deathworlders had come when no one else could. They had faced impossible odds and won through Courage, sacrifice, and the simple human refusal to give up when people needed help. The quarantine barriers came down, and humanity took its place among the stars. Not as conquerors or destroyers, but as the protectors they had always been meant to be. The galaxy was safer now, knowing that somewhere in the Sol system, humans were watching and waiting, ready to answer the next call for help. In the words that would be carved on memorials across 1,000 worlds, when darkness falls and hope seems lost, the Deathworlders answer at the end.